Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Caresoft Technology would like to welcome you to our ServiceNow Public Sector Tech Talk, Software Asset Management, a Strategic Path to Efficiency and Compliance. Before we get started, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items. Please note that all lines have been muted to reduce any kind of background noise during the presentation. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer by the end of the presentation or follow up with you offline. This webinar is being recorded, and a copy will be emailed to you. Just to tell you a little bit about Caresoft, we are a trusted government IT solutions provider supporting public sector organizations across federal, state, and local government agencies, including education and healthcare markets. At this time, I'd like to hand the floor over to our speakers. Andy, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, everybody. Comms check. I think everyone can hear me. If you can't, great. Thank you, Ryan. My name is Andy Shear, as Sarah said. Thank you, Sarah, for the intro. And today we're super excited to have you all here. Today we're going to be talking about, and I promise this will be the first and last time that I read a slide, but as Sarah said, this is the Software Asset Management, a Strategic Path to Efficiency and Compliance. Over the past, ServiceNow Software Asset Management has been a very popular solution for a long time. We have lots of government agencies that have our SAM solution. We have some government agencies that have standardized on it across the entire organization. But over the last 6 months, because of a change in some macro events, we have seen a lot more interest in our SAM solution. So while we're talking to customers almost daily about SAM, we thought it would be a good idea to have a webinar to really, just kind of discuss the value of SAM, sort of what we're seeing now in our current environment, and some of the things that we see coming down the pike, and how SAM can help and help you manage your software estate across the government. So with that, let's get started. We've got a packed agenda, and we're super excited to be here. So with that, let's go. So the first thing is the obligatory, always important safe harbor notice. I'll vamp a little so you can read through it. It's a lot of words, but essentially it's just saying that if we may contain some forward-looking statements, and that those forward-looking statements might have some unknown risks, uncertainties, etc. So give it a read. I'll count to 3, and then we'll move on from there. All right, wonderful. So today, meet our speakers. I am the one on the left. My name is Andrew Shearer. I am a senior solutions executive here at ServiceNow. I support the Department of Defense. On the right-hand side is Ryan Patrick. Ryan is my peer, but he supports folks on the civilian side. And in the middle is Tom Boudreau. Tom is our technical wizard, our technical guru, and Tom is the one that's really going to be showing you the magic of ServiceNow and get into the instance and show you all the cool things that Ryan and I talk about. Tom's going to show you how they actually work inside the product. For time, etc., we're going to let Tom and Ryan will just reintroduce themselves when they start to talk. The 3 of us are going to talk. We found that on webinars sometimes it's good to have multiple voices, so you just don't hear my voice drone on time over time. So with that, let's get to the agenda. The agenda, as I said, we have a crowded agenda, but I think it's going to prove to be exciting. The first thing we're going to talk about is our current environment. Our agenda, what we tried to do is go macro to micro, right? So the first thing is going to be the current environment of the world today across software asset management, across government customers. Then Ryan is going to talk to you about our software asset management solution from an overview perspective of the actual product, going through it through slides. We found that that's a very good way to before you go into the actual demo, to kind of get a 30,000-foot view of what the solution actually does. I'm going to come back and talk about our software asset management solution from a financial perspective, right? A return on investment perspective. And then I'm going to continue on with some brief different legislative issues and requirements that we see that currently exist, and maybe some things that we see down the road. And then ultimately, Tom's going to come in and finish it off with that demo that's going to kind of wrap everything up and show you everything that ServiceNow can do. So the current environment. Now, this is the first time that I've used one of these AI video creators, but this is what when we talk to our current customers, this is how they say they feel, right? They feel that they are every time they open every time they open their email, different buzzwords are being sent to them, different requirements. How do they what kind of report do they need to get out the door? It is a constant barrage of different requirements that is being sent to them, and they oftentimes feel very chaotic, very unsettled. And it's really no wonder that this is happening, right? Procurement and asset teams feel completely overwhelmed. The pressure is real. We see and hear about it every day. But what's driving this? I think the key to understanding this is not that it's happening, but what's driving it, right? Beyond the stress, beyond the requirements of immediate action from those emails, beyond the complexity, what's driving the want for this transparency and visibility now? And the answer is that is money, right? There is a hidden cost that is silently eating budgets. And it's taking away from budgets every single day. So let's talk about it, right? So Gartner says that 30% across large environments, large software environments, there is 30% of software spend that is wasted due to poor licensing practices. Now, I want to focus on the word wasted for a second, because I don't want that to be a pejorative to the people that are watching this webinar. Nobody whose mission it is to manage software for the government, whether it be the federal government, state and local, et cetera, is trying to waste money. So we never think it's the human beings that are the issue. What the issue is oftentimes is that they don't have the right point solutions. They don't have the right solutions to be able to provide the necessary visibility, transparency, and visibility in order to do their jobs correctly. Our biggest competitor for software asset management is Microsoft Excel, right? And if you are trying to manage, I have a customer that has 16,000 software titles. 16,000 software titles is an enormous amount. Let's say you only have 1,500 software titles, which is a relatively small, relatively small amount when we're talking about, government procurement of software. If you're trying to manage 1,500 software titles on a spreadsheet that you're trying to figure out what's end of life, what's end of service, when does my contract go up, how many different software titles do I own, what's the utilization rate, who's using them, who's not using them, who has them but isn't using them. It's impossible. It's an impossible thing to do. So again, we're going to talk about this 30%, and it's a real number and it equals real dollars. But again, it is not, we don't think it's the response. We don't think it's because of the activity of the human beings that are trying to manage software. We think it's that it's a lack of tools to help you with that transparency and visibility. So what does 30% mean? This is from a federal perspective, and I always say that my third grade math teacher would be very proud of me here because I'm showing my work of how we got to this number. But as you can see, the federal, because there isn't one number somewhere out there that tells you this. So the federal IT budget across about civilian, DoD, and Intel is about $200 billion a year, or it was in 2024. But the federal government, what they've decided is it's just a single budget line item, right? So it just says IT, and it doesn't break it out into hardware, IT services, or software. So what we did is we went in and we looked at things like Gartner and Forrester and IDC, and we found, what percentage is what is made up of that IT budget, hardware, IT services, and software. And so we did a low number and a high number, and then I took the middle. So for instance, hardware is 30% on the low end, 40% on the high end, et cetera. Software is about 10% on the low end, 35% on the high end. And so I took the middle range in that green, which is about 23%. So of that $200 billion, 23%, or about $46 billion, was spent last year in the federal government on IT, on software. If we assume that 30% potential waste number, you're talking it's about $14 billion that is available for making more efficient and for saving some of that money. And that 14 billion is why the federal government is so interested in making sure that we optimize our software spend, right? That we're making sure that we're spending what we're using and we're using what we're paying for. right? So the math is the math, right? 30% is a big number. And as you can see, it equates to a lot of money. But the next logical question, of course, then is how does this happen? What are the root causes behind this consistent loss? Because again, that 30% is across not just the federal government, it's across all businesses globally, right? And the reason is, again, I'm not going to read the slide, but these are the three main pillars of why software goes to waste. And candidly, you can put this under one umbrella. And the one umbrella is lack of visibility and transparency, right? If I don't have lack of visibility, if I don't have visibility and transparency, it's probably because I have siloed tools. It's because I have lack of cost visibility. I don't know how much I've been spending, and it makes it absolutely impossible for me to react to fire drills. So ServiceNow, as Ryan's going to show you in the next slide, ServiceNow is here to help you with why software goes to waste and what can we do to increase that visibility, increase that the visibility and transparency. All right, so with that, I'm going to go to you, Ryan. I'll be quiet and I'll just move the slides when you tell me to.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Let's go into that first slide if you don't mind. There we go. And a little bit of a busy slide. But good afternoon. Thanks everybody for joining. As Andy said, Ryan Patrick. I'm Andy's counterpart on the civilian side. So thanks again for joining. So taking a look at this slide, I want to review kind of what we think at ServiceNow, what we consider software asset management as a definition. And some agencies, businesses consider software asset management just the counting of your software licenses or the accounting of your software purchases, which is true. But just like any business, we considered SAM or software asset management a business practice with many more important components. And this includes people, various processes, and technologies that really help to optimize the governance of software throughout its full life cycle, right? And so within software asset management, we break this business practice down with key four objectives in mind, and it's down your left-hand side. So to simplify, what software do you own and what software is installed in your instance? Pretty important and pretty critical to understand that, right? Ensuring that you're buying what you need and only what you need. So let's eliminate that wasted cost that I think Andy alluded to earlier, and just making sure you buy what you need. Utilizing what you currently have and maximizing the potential with what you have is very critical. And then fourth, which is one of the most critical components, is ensuring that you're prepared for an audit that might come up. And whether that's internal or if it's coming from external. And I'm sure that a lot of individuals on this call can relate to this in recent months or even in the past years. Can you deliver a report or a breakdown of not only what you own, but what's being utilized so that you're meeting those compliance issues? So I spoke about processes that are involved in overall asset management. And if you look at, we'll call it the wheel to the right, where you're going to see several of these outlined. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but as you can see, the life cycle of a software asset typically, or even a hardware asset, right, typically starts with the request phase and then ends with the retirement of, in this case, the software asset. But there are many processes in between that maybe fall outside of just the IT acquisition and retirement. So let's just think of an example, right? So think about onboarding for new hires who need access to a particular software application to do their job, right? You've got to fulfill that request and you've got to ensure that users are added to, Active Directory so that they're able to access it. Making sure that the right business unit is properly charged for that software license that comes into the accounting piece or the financial piece. Ensuring that you in the IT environment are monitoring the security and vulnerabilities of all of your software so that you're compliant within your agency. So those are just some examples. I want you to think outside the box within your own environment. But those are just some examples of the processes that you should be thinking about. And with our asset management solution, we have out of the box low configuration workflows that really help address those use cases I talked about, but others as well. Andy, next slide, please. Thank you. So the next slide here is something we always want to share with our customers and our partners, because it's not just us here at ServiceNow saying that, hey, we have a great asset management solution, right? It's the third party research and advisory firms, as well as our customers and partners who provide the feedback and who provide the insights for various technologies. And as you can see on here, Omdia, Gartner, and G2 all rank us as a leader in the asset management space. So that's encompassing of our hardware, our software, and our enterprise asset management. Several of these are specific just to software. And this really is done by comparing multiple asset management solutions, so different providers, different solutions, capabilities, quantifiable return on investment, and then overall efficiency improvements. So we're considered a leader from all three firms based on our single architecture platform, our machine learning capabilities, real-time insights like our executive dashboards, and then most importantly, our customer-centric approach. Next slide, Andy. And I'll let Andy build that out. Thank you, sir. So this next slide is our SAM outcomes. And really our approach revolves around those four key things, those four strategies on the left. So optimizing investments, reducing risk, and enhancing efficiency with a focus on providing tangible results. We want to make sure that these are results that you can see, that you can show. And really what separates us from our competition is the unique blend of features that we provide thanks to our advanced platform. So we'll start with the optimizing investments. So for optimizing investments, we facilitate remediation and reclaiming of licenses. We simplify application rationalization, managing all of those SaaS assets, and then even simulating cloud expenses. We're equally committed to risk, so to risk mitigation, covering software exposure or those what-if scenarios, merging ITAM with risk management, monitoring restricted software use, and keeping tabs, which I think is very critical, on those software lifecycle dates. So the end of support, the end of lifecycle for those software licenses. Streamlining efficiency is critical and paramount with machine learning, normalization, guided user experiences, seamless onboarding and offboarding, which I kind of talked about on the previous two slides, integrations with different processes. So those are things that we really focus on. I won't go through every component as you guys can read it, but our innovations revolve around delivering those tangible results. And if you look to the far right, you'll see some of those results, whether they are overall cost savings, so a number, or just a reduction in time spent doing various tasks. We know that agencies and businesses alike are being asked to do a lot more with a lot less. So we want to show not just the financial results, but also the time spent doing the various tasks. Andy, next slide, please. So let's talk at a high level about asset connections. So this is how the asset connections work. We've empowered our customers to leverage a variety of discovery tools to ingest data or information, to gather information about your software installations, your usage, your licenses. So these connections are often done through Service Graph connectors and or direct integration profiles. So starting on the left, you'll see a variety of tools, starting up top with our ITOM discovery tool. Hopefully you're using that or you're going to be using that for your discovery method. But if not a problem. You might be using SSCM or Jamf or even those third-party tools that are shown on the bottom left. Regardless of which discovery method you're going to use, we make it simple for you to connect it with ServiceNow. Next, this data is going to go into the identification and reconciliation engine to enable you to deduplicate records coming in from all those multiple data sources and then normalize those records so you're standardizing on things like software names, versions, and other attributes. This will give you a clean and accurate, very important, clean and accurate data so that you can start your software asset management journey. And at the end of the day, we want to ensure that you have clean and accurate data going into our platform so you can focus on those critical business processes that you've been tasked to do. Next, I'm going to turn it back to Andy. He's going to go over some return on investment numbers and then legislation. Go ahead, Andy.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. So as Ryan said, ServiceNow, we have lots of different products inside of our platform, right? Our platform is very, very powerful. And then we have different products that sit on top of the platform. SAM, HAM, EAM, SPM, ITSM. There's a litany of different products, right? And all of them have a certain level of return on investment. All of them will provide efficiencies, et cetera. But SAM specifically, I believe, has the most demonstrable, quantifiable return on investment of any solution that we have. Why? Because it's a binary construct. Either I'm paying for software or I can lessen the number of licenses that I'm buying. And so it's quite easy to determine what are my savings and then apply those to my return on investments. So to that end, the following slide. Now this slide, there's a lot of words here. We're not going to focus in on all the words, but this is a slide that was created by our BVA group, which is our business value analysis group. And on the right-hand side, I put some different things in bold that I want to touch upon. So the first thing is inside of when you deploy ServiceNow software asset management, what we're seeing, and these are global numbers. These are not just for the federal government or not just for the state and local government. This is for all of our customers across the globe, so that there's a much larger data set that we're looking at. And what we've seen, interestingly enough, we've seen both a 24% reduction in SaaS spend and in on-prem spend, right? So 24%, remember we talked about, so if you're having, $1 million or $10 million software spend in your agency, which would be quite small, and you're saving 24% of spend, it's $2.4 million, which then you apply that to what you're spending on licenses, you're going to be getting a significant ROI, right? One of the things that Ryan mentioned also was this idea of audits. Interestingly enough, is when you're using ServiceNow and you've deployed software asset management, we're seeing about a 41% reduction in software audits. One of the reasons is because there isn't that risk of all the true ups, because you have a daily real-time understanding of whether or not you're underutilizing software or overutilizing software. But I think maybe the most important one, and as Ryan said, that when you get an audit, whether it's from an external source or an internal source, right? Some leadership reaches out to you and says, hey, we need to know what we're doing with these 5 software titles, right? Instead of having to cull through spreadsheets or make data calls, or you can reduce that time by 80%, because you can open the instance, find that piece of software, do a couple clicks, and you can see exactly how much you're spending on that particular software. So what we've seen is about an 80% reduction in the average time to plan, respond, and execute an audit. And again, for breaches, for security, right? If a security folks reaches out and says, hey, there's a security issue with software XYZ, how many licenses and where does that software exist on our network? Immediately, we can tell them. Again, it reduces the time, and the reduction in that breach can be reduced because of the speed at which we can go after it. Now, I always like to talk about software asset management in the wild, right? I talked earlier about how a lot of customers across the federal government own ServiceNow SAM. And there are a few customers that have standardized on SAM across their entire organization. Last month, this is probably 5 weeks ago, there was a subcommittee on the technology modernization and oversight hearing for the VA, for the Veterans Affairs. And the whole reason for it was improving software licensing management. And I did a 15-second snippet that I would like you to hear, because I think it's pretty impressive. So again, the VA is using ServiceNow, and we're going to hit. Hopefully you'll hear this.
And so have you found any promising information showing that it's actually going to identify any cost or help you with cost management?
Yes, we've already had some significant cost avoidance just in the top 15 titles. To date, I think the number is somewhere about $136 million that we've had in terms of getting better visibility.
So if you didn't hear that, what he said was the Congresswoman asked, are you seeing any savings or more efficiencies? And what he responded with cost avoidance over the 15 biggest titles, they've seen $136 million in benefit, $136 million in cost avoidance. And that's just in the top 15 titles. Obviously, the VA's got a lot more titles than that, and they're sort of starting down their SAM journey. So you can see the scale and scope of this and the amount of savings that potentially are there across the entire government. So I wanted to finish the part that Ryan and I are going to talk about before we turn it over to Tom. And that is this idea of legislative requirements. And look, legislative requirements have been around for a long time about trying to manage and get a handle on what's going on inside of the software asset management time continuum inside the federal government, right? FTARA has been around for a long time. The Megabyte Act, I think, was enacted in 2016. There certainly is OMB guidance that comes out periodically that issues different directives about managing software. Certainly, what DOJ was doing, earlier this year with their software modernization initiatives and trying to see who's spending what and listing particular titles that they wanted to get a sense of who had what, et cetera. And then there's another one that's on the horizon called SAMOSA, and so we've made it green because we want to double click into this one just a little bit. So SAMOSA stands for the Strengthening Agency Management and Oversight of Software Assets. With that title, we will stick with SAMOSA. And it was passed by the House in December. HR 1695 passed in December, and we're starting to see it get traction in the Senate. Now, look, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what the Senate is ultimately going to do, but it seems like the tea leaves are that it's pushing to be enacted, and that it has bipartisan support. And again, there's nothing revolutionary about what SAMOSA is going to require, right? It's building upon what they did with Megabyte. And look, what they're asking for are things that are basic. They're asking for a current software inventory, right? Contracts, accounting of software usage, cost, those types of things. You can read it just like I can. So while SAMOSA is not earth-shattering in what it wants you to see, what we wanted to do, the reason we wanted to bring it up is because Tom, when he read through it, he said, you know what? I'm reading through this, I'm seeing the requirements, and he pulled out what he thought the requirements were, and he built a ServiceNow dashboard, which he's going to show you. And the reason why that's so important, look, is we have this data. This data is part of the CMDB. It's part of that ServiceNow SAM solution. And so and we have out-of-the-box dashboards that show a tremendous amount of information. But if there are things that SAMOSA is asking for specifically, right, we can build a dashboard that is more custom to exactly what you want to see. Now, our legal team has told me that I must say this, that interpreting and implementing legislation is not ServiceNow's responsibility. Obviously, it's the organization's responsibility. So we're not saying that by having this dashboard, you are quote unquote would be SAMOSA compliant. But what we are saying is that we have the data, we have the flexibility of creating these dashboards with that citizen development. You don't need to be a coder. You don't need to be somebody that is going to do specialized code to create these dashboards, right? You can do some click and some drag, and all of a sudden you've got this SAMOSA dashboard that meets your requirements. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and I think he's going to be able to really encapsulate all these kind of cool things that Ryan and I have talked about from a 30,000 foot view. We're going to be able to get to see in the instance. So Tom?
All right, perfect.
I'll stop sharing.
All right. So before I begin, again, my name is Tom Boudreau. I service typically our civilian federal clients, kind of DHS and DOJ and Department of State, and our Treasury and financials in the federal area. But I've had experience with a broad swath of federal agencies, both from my time as a contractor at DHS and OMB. So when I read this this requirements, it basically covers a lot of best practices around software asset management, right? It's I love it because it's putting into practice what would be a great idea anyways, and it's capturing those best practice, right? And it also it sets some deadlines in. So I took that as an opportunity to use a piece of the platform we have called Platform Analytics. This is included with almost every solution we offer. They always bundle it in as an offering. So basically, I can assume that almost everyone with ServiceNow has this because everybody has at least a solution, right? And when I did this, you can just simply hit edit and you can build and change your tabs and click on a chart and see the details of it. So you can build this very quickly, right? You just lay it out. This took me like a couple of days to put together. The magic of this is that how quickly you can iterate and get at stuff that you need to make reporting that is exactly what you want. Part of the benefit of this too is that everything that you build includes for free drill downs to the records. So you're never like building something that you can't get at the details of. I click here, I see the 15 entitlements that are separated that I use to buy Oracle DB Server, right? And it takes me right to the list, right? So really powerful drill down, right? That will work across all those platforms, right? And I can see all the times that I bought Oracle Database Server, right? So super powerful from that. And it comes, all these come for, that all comes for free, right? So some of the themes I wanted to explore are entitlement consolidation. So in ServiceNow, we have the concept of software entitlement, which is the buy record of what you bought. It links to the software model that we have in the catalog, and it includes the details about the price you paid, the licensing metric that's associated with it, and so on, right? But simply just by counting the number of discrete entitlements you have for a given product, because all the products are normalized by SAM, you can start to see like, why did we buy something 20 different times, right? The more times we bought it, the more renewal processes we're going to have to deal with, right? This is adding work to your environment. So these are all ones that you have the opportunity to kind of consolidate this in scatteredness as much as you can. So every renewal, even if you weren't going to get a better price, and even if you weren't going to change the quantity, you could at least consolidate so that way you get a win on the efficiency of dealing with the renewal process with the vendors, right? And again, for every vendor you do this, for every product, this is adds up quickly, right? So this is a really nice view, and you can see that, right? So the more scattered it is, the longer the bar, the worse that situation is, right? Now, down below here, we have the same sort of thing, which from vendors, we have the various metrics that you can use to buy things. So for example, I can see all the ways I have bought from IBM as an example, right? So IBM has some complicated licensing metrics, like all the ones that end in VU. So these processor value units, we do all the calculations for that to help you, but they're complicated and they make it more difficult to consolidate and optimize kind of on purpose, right? With complexity comes like, I'll just maintain the status quo as like your default answer. So what we want to do is make it simple so that you have visibility of that and you can actually optimize based on your usage, right? So this is a good value as well, right? You want as few metrics as you can. So you want these bars to be as single colored as you possibly can make them. So that's a value over here. Now on the entitlement side, on the mix side, right, we're going to show you how many different kinds of ways did you buy something too, right? So when you buy something, we keep track if it's an enterprise agreement. We keep track if it's a buy for a given department, right? Which is fine in some cases, but you don't want that to be a majority of your spend, right? Or what are these other ones where you didn't buy it on an enterprise agreement and you bought it kind of one-off, right? But it wasn't for a department. It's otherwise an enterprise buy, right? All of these we can work at both from accounting perspective and then over here from a dollars perspective, right? So I only spent $2 million on buying software departments. So maybe that's not where I want to focus. I want to focus on this $74 million that I bought that's in opposed to only $10 million of enterprise agreement spending where you have the good scale, right? And then we also want to look at where we have our renewals spread out. So this is like the next 4 years of renewals. When are these renewals coming up? You're not going to be able to do as good of a job optimizing if all of your renewals are happening at the same time. You're just going to be forced into renewing flat or trusting the vendors who will try to get you to do a 7 to 12% uplift on everything you've ever bought, right? Because that's their job. That's how their quotas work, right? So spreading these out, and that's a challenge in government fiscal buying where it's kind of September centric anyways, but spreading this out is going to be valuable. So just having a view into how squished your stuff is, how bunched your renewals are, that's going to be the same thing. And that's something that like the cores or previously the COTARs will really enjoy. All right. So this was just like 5 charts I made just from one table's worth of data, the entitlements. But then I kept going because it's easy to make these multi-tab dashboards. So I did utilization, right? So we have the ability to track stuff over time in ServiceNow using the KPIs. This one is actually out of the box. This is the mix of your total spend across software, hardware, and cloud. This comes and is already present in our asset executive workspace. But I took it a step further and I said, why don't I take that hardware spend number that's moving over time and why don't I ratio it by the number of employees? So we can be like, how much are we spending on hardware per employee, right? And that's a really good metric. You can see if it's going up or down. You can kind of understand your broad spending that way very quickly. So this is a great way to do it. And so in my case, this is information where in my example environment here, I have a lot of software and a minimal set of hardware just because I have to demonstrate all kinds of software from every vendor. So mine is a little bit skewed, but you can understand, right? We can also, and that leads me to having extremely high, but improving software spend per employee on average, right? Spending $23K and change per employee is not a recipe for success. So I'd encourage you to get this down, right? Think about the amount of stuff you have in your laptop. You have an OS license. You probably have an Office license. You have several SaaS accounts. Like this number is going to be bigger than you think. Might be several to $5,000, but $23,000 is probably a little excessive. So that's what you can have as a view into that, right? Now, I have a link out right here to the executive workspace, which I already have open. Right, the executive workspace is going to track that total spend, again, across software, hardware, and cloud, including the actual savings that you've achieved and the potential savings. So these actual savings are from, when you click into this, right, it's going to show you all the workflows you have utilized in either the software space or the cloud space. There's a tab for each where you have removed software that wasn't being used from the environment. Right. So that can include on-prem software like Adobe InDesign, right, which has a subscription behind it, or it can include straight SaaS like log me in, go to webinar or go to meeting, right? All those are there. I've filtered them in terms of the cost, but you can see it goes on and on for every one of these that you take out. That's savings that you can account for right there. Now we do this for software, which includes SaaS, but we also do it for cloud infrastructure spend. So when you change something from, from a too large of a server because you weren't using enough to a smaller server, so that your utilization of the infrastructure is better, right? We're going to help you with that. There's a workflow for that. It automatically creates a change request. There's a job to help process it, and it works across compute, storage, and database, and so on, right? So for this configuration item, which is a piece of infrastructure in your environment servicing one of your applications, right? We can see, okay, by downsizing this one, we saved, a certain amount each month, right? $1,000 a month, $1,200 a month, and so on, right? And this really adds up over time because these are monthly savings just from, like, say, storage for one of our storage volumes that we're using in AWS, right? If you thought it was easy to waste money in software, it's even easier to waste money with Azure, AWS, and Google infrastructure because of that, right? Now, we also keep track over here on the potential savings, which you'll see in our SAM dashboard as well. But this is going to mix together the software and the cloud. These are ones that have yet to be utilized where you can run the workflows to do that savings, and it's exactly the same, right? So you'll have stuff where you can take down unused SAP developer accounts, cloud right sizing, cloud unused machines, reservations, and cloud business hours things. These will all roll in to get you that savings immediately, right? Which contributes to Andy's statement around SAM having really hard, direct hard dollar ROI potential right away, and the numbers being large because software spend is usually preponderance of your IT budget in these days. Okay, so that's kind of a quick look at the utilization. I'll keep going here and continue kind of with a little tour of SAM as well to give you that insight. So one area to look at is contract linkage. In an ideal world, you have a contract that backs your buying. So these can be like, it could be government GWACs that you're using. It could be stuff like, what was GSA Schedule 70, NASA SOUP, like all those sorts of things. And you want the entitlements to be tied to those. So this shows you where do we have contracts that don't have entitlements, but that are for software, right? So this is just data maintenance, right? This is keeping track of which vendors these are from, which software contracts are missing entitlements, and which ones are set up. This is in the SAMOSA Act is something that they want that traceability for. So this is a place to dashboard yourself on where those are. And the magic again is you can click on the 28, it'll take you to the list and you can correct this so that the missing metrics are 0, right? You want these red ones to be zeros, right? Same thing, renewal spread on the contracts. Again, a wide, even spread is better than bunch things for the same reasons, right? So that's all there, right? And then speaking of kind of overlap, we have a view into product overlap. As a part of SAM, what we do is all these products get normalized the name, and the vendors and the versions and that, but we also add end of life dates and categories to them. So the categories allow us to see how many discrete products do we have in a given space, right? We have 12 different graphics and photo imaging apps. We have 49 different database applications, right? Now, these are discrete versions of those. So some of this will be version sprawl within things, but that's also bad. So you can click into these and see that, right? This is for our installed software. And then out of the box, there's actually one for overlapping usage in the software asset workspace, right? Which I'm going to leave my dashboard open and open that here, right? So this is going to cover you for SaaS. You're going to look at the fact that you have 3 different product management SaaS applications, right? Again, these are things you can consolidate. So there's a view here around your different products as well as the spend. So there's accounts on the left, spend on the right. This is out of the box on this little tab down here within the software asset management workspace, right? Now you can roll down and see the exact ones, or you can click into these charts. All right. Now, another one that's really valuable that we help with that Ryan mentioned as well is our end of life dates. So as a part of enriching the product models with the end of life dates from the manufacturer, you're going to get when did that product start being sold? That's what we call the GA date or the general availability date. And then vendors will do it 2 ways. They'll either just say, here's the end of life date, or they'll offer, if they're a bigger vendor like Microsoft, they'll offer an end of support and an end of extended support, right? You really want to be off of it by the end of support date, because otherwise you're paying extra for that support if you're in the extended support window. And generally that's not an efficient use of money, right? Which would hit some of the themes that are kind of in the current climate is be efficient with your spend. Don't be paying extra to run old software, right? So that's there. We have views of this in our lifecycle management area, which again, I'll pop open just in a new tab. But right here, I made like an install count view of it. In our workspace in the lifecycle management area, we have a view of the amount of products, and there's a age-based view of when those went end of life. And this lets you see kind of how old some of your stuff is. It's like, okay, we've got 4 products that went end of extended support in 2020, right? That we're still utilizing today, right? That's the sort of stuff you want to tackle. And you can tackle, it's almost always a bell curve to the left of today, right? So there's most stuff will be semi-recently end of life, but there's always this long tail of really old stuff as well. Now, as a part of this, right, we're also in the SAMOSA dashboard, I added ones for the install counts. So you can see how, not just the number of products, but the total number of installs that are end of life, so that you can metric yourself on this improving and going down over time. And then also which products those are. So these are like the top 10 products that have the largest end of life footprints. right? So you can see all the installs for end-of-life SQL Server right there, right? So that's super powerful. Now, one of the things that we do to help you with this is do a workflow to do an end-of-life software remediation. Now, I have 27 of these workflows in process. I've completed none of them, right? Starting them doesn't do you any good. You got to finish them. So this is a great way to metric as you just started this over time, how to do that. So this is going to show you how many of these installs are covered by these workflows and how many workflows in general you have. Now, on the workspace down here, there's some charting to show you, what are in analysis phases, which ones have gotten to the action. And then when you get to the actions, right, which ignores the pendings, you're either going to remove it, upgrade it, buy support, or accept the risk. And we track that whole process for you, including having security evaluate it, EA evaluate it. There's taskings for that. And then it creates a change request for you or a PO if you're buying an upgrade, for example, right? And in all of those cases, we are managing that for you, soup to nuts, so that you have traceability on the fact that this could happen. And you took something out of the environment that improved your risk profile, like was mentioned on Andy's slide with all the words. That's one of the outcomes under the risk area, which is remediating end of life stuff so that you have fewer breaches, because most most vulnerabilities and attacks in that nature, most spending on support is because of kind of past its prime software that's end of life or exceedingly end of life in some cases, right? So all of that is good and tangible help that you can do from this. Again, I put this dashboard together in a couple of days just to kind of give a SAMOSA flavor to data we already had, right? And then there's some coverage area here. This will help you just like understand the right sizing of your environment, right? It's like, okay, we've got 3,336 employees, this many computers, this many servers, this many SaaS applications, this many software models that are where we have installs, but we don't have an entitlement record for those. So these are, ones where, we don't have the data we need to connect to kind of show the breadcrumbs that are necessary to meet the SAMOSA Act, where they want to understand these installs are of these models, which were bought by on this date for this price under this contract. And we know all about that up and down, right? That's what we want to be able to do. So this gives you a little bit of stuff here with some red numbers to help kind of focus you. Now, speaking of kind of the savings and overall, if I was to show you just the broad-based look at how this would work, I'm going to take you to just our software asset workspace and how this would generally work, right? This is using our new Yokohama release, right, which has some AI built into it as well to help you understand what should I focus on, right? What you'll see is we're going to show you which publishers are out of compliance, which products are out of compliance, what your over license amount is. That's where you're going to want to focus. That's where you've bought way more than you need on the data center side, especially. So we can't just turn those accounts off. We can't just uninstall SQL Server because you're not, quote, using it, right? This is ones where you need to evaluate the situation there and work that down. The potential savings down here, right, which has 800K of SaaS usage that's low, that's either low or not being used. That's end user software where you can take away accounts or you can uninstall like Visio Project, etc., Photoshop from their machine, right? So these are kind of two classes of buckets, but same theme. Now, when you look into those, where you click into them, what it brings you is to this usage area, right? And this is where we roll up all the publishers. Get this to roll up here, right? We roll up all the publishers so that you have one square for all of your Microsoft, for all of your Adobe, for all of your Oracle, right? And part of that is to bring together, right, and so that you have a consolidated place to view all the stuff that you have from a given company, right? So, and if you dive into a company like Microsoft, right, it's going to show you the full display of all the products that you have from Microsoft, right? Now, we offer a summary from AI to kind of give you like how am I looking with Microsoft, right? You can have it do that for you, and it will give you the broad-based view of what is your Microsoft situation, right? And the analysis, what it's doing is it's looking at all your deployments, it's looking at your licensing, it's doing the math on there and sorting out what you have. It's going to tell you about your biggest deployments, where your compliance issues are, right? Where you have optimization opportunities and where you might have issues with your discovery data, right? It tells you right here that one of the biggest ones is related to SQL Server. And we're going to dive into that because what you can do is you can pick a product now and it will give you both a summary for that product, but also some recommended actions to go with it, which I think are game changing. So what you can see here is that for all the different versions of SQL Server that we have, SQL Server comes in enterprise and standard versions or editions. Those cost very big different amounts. So it's valuable to kind of have both and get those correct. But it tells you about your footprint. Remember, we talked about that. That was a big footprint. We had a lot of sprawl on that. Tells us our total spend on the product, which is nice, right? Just as quick. It tells us we have a lot of room for optimizations. It's an $11 million number. And then it tells me a lot about discovery issues that I have around it. Some of these complex data center products require data to help you. So one of which, and we raise them for you in these health check issues. So if you open this up, what it actually does is brings together all the health check issues for SQL Server, and we'll show you. So like, I'll call your attention to this one, like the environment field being empty. So for SQL Server, you actually don't need to pay for your SQL Server licenses on standby environments. So that might be like a warm or a cold standby. So if you have a production system and you don't know any better, you might be paying for all of your standby environments, right? That might be 40% of your environment, might be, right? Because again, they're generally mirrors of production in size. It might be 40 to 50% of your environment size, like in terms of the number of cores that you're paying for unnecessarily. And what this is telling you is, hey, friend, you got to fill in the environment field so that we know if that's production, standby, or development, right? And that matters because we can use Visual Studio licenses for development, and we can essentially erase the cost for standbys. So that's the sort of thing where it's like, it's small and easy, but that's also something that like you got to do because we can't just know omnisciently if that's a standby environment or a production environment. Okay. So really good things. And these checks all have workflows to help you remediate them and track them. And you can use scripts and other things to help fill in that data quickly because you don't want to update 3,000 things, right? Maybe you can use a host name pattern or something. So that's all super valuable, right? We'll show you where you have installs requiring action, remediation options you can do. And again, also end of life. So I can go right to that end of life report specifically to SQL Server, right? And I'll see the environments I have that are end of life, which ones are end of extended support or support, how many of those there are. And if I open up one of these, like the SQL Server 2012, again, that's 13 years old because Microsoft handily puts the years in the versions, right? Just colloquially, right? You'll be able to see the details around exactly when we hit extended support, end of extended support started in 2022. There's no more phases coming up, right? You have the installs right here. You're going to see exactly what discovery model it is, which is going to have like the precise point version and exactly which VM it's on, right? And then we have one of those requests already started. Again, this is going to be that change request or that workflow that manages it and eventually creates change requests to get those things updated to 16, to 22, or to whatever version you decide to do it, right? Again, it's going to create a series of tasks. It's going to help you manage that. This gets automatically created by the workflow, which I think is amazing, but it'll create a series of tasks for you, and it will eventually create a change request or one or more change requests and one or more POs to make this happen so that you can actually get this upgraded and supported, right? So a super, super valuable, but also quick tour of SAM as a way to apply this as a means to meet requirements that are semi-new in their bundling, but were always good practices anyways. Right. So again, I did this in SAMOSA under the auspices of SAMOSA, but they're good practices regardless. Whether or not that bill, if that bill is never passed, these are still a good idea, and will still help you with the inevitable next data call that happens around being efficient with your software spend, as kind of software continues to kind of eat the world for everything. All right. So with that, I'll wrap up the demonstration, hand it back to Andy and Ryan.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I always love seeing those. It's very impressive. Of course, the dashboarding is impressive, and then knowing that those dashboards are just an aggregate of all these individual records that are bubbling up to the dashboard. So really impressive. Very, thanks for doing that. And so we're at 1:57, perfect time. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sticking with us for the hour. And as Sarah said, she's going to get out this presentation and all of the follow-up information. And please, you can reach out to myself directly. You can reach out to Ryan directly, and we can push you in the right directions to speak with folks if you're interested in having additional conversations. But with that, we'll say thank you. Have a wonderful holiday of the 4th next week, and please reach out to us if you need anything. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. I'd like to thank all of our participants as well as our speakers for being with us today. We hope the information you received during this webinar has been helpful. If you do have any further questions or would like to request more information, please feel free to reach out. Thank you again and have a great day.